Hi guys, while I was researching something for my previous video, I noticed how incredibly detailed the instructions of the various rituals for Muslims are. I decided to revisit this here. Praying, well, after the declaration of believing in a God and his messenger, is the second most important task and pillar in Islam. Oh, and just as an explanation before I continue, in Islamic mythology, jinns are good or bad spirits or demons made from smoke, which people in the 7th century was a product and not the result of a process, fire. So they can be invisible or take on any shape. Now, the God Muslims believe exists only created humans and these jinns out, well, for narcissistic reasons, if you believe the Quran, which says, "And I created not the jinns and humans, except they should worship me alone." How could all this happen, and why? Well, here's my version of an explanation. Now, if you imagine you're a god for a minute, hanging around just with a throne and some water, and nobody loves you, what do? Well, other than feeling sorry for yourself, easy, you create things that love you. Well, you realize that you can't really make anything love you, so you make things to worship you. I suppose that's second best. Now, you have already tried your hand at creating and came up with angels, endlessly worshipping you. But somehow you get bored with this. And you create jinns, and after a while get bored with those as well. Now, in your desperation, you create humans, where, well, you create them just to worship you, but they don't seem to understand this. They carry on with their associating all sorts of things in nature with what they call gods. You watch for, 150,000 years and then decide to send them a book to give them guidance. They don't understand you. You write another book, but all that happens is that they turn to other gods. Well, then, by now totally frustrated, you send an angel on a mission to a guy living in a desert with your orders. You want to show him your certificates for the best schemer, the best plotter, or the best creator to impress him, but you picked a guy who can't read, so you're screwed because it means you need to earn respect the old-fashioned way. But all you want is just to see, regardless of what time zone or latitude you're watching, humans all falling to their knees, telling you what a great God you are. All you need now is a reason why. That's why you want to keep it simple, and you do some brainstorming, and you come up with 3 simple alternatives why humans should worship you. Pray or pay, pray or die, pray or hell. Well, you can't really decide which one is the catchiest, so you go with all 3. But this seems too much for humans, and they don't seem too impressed, as only like 20% accept this. The rest don't. But the ones who do take you seriously have to get the worshipping part right, and have to get their act together to not be punished for their failures you created them capable of. Well, the remaining 80% you created to worship you as well, but failed to get it right, which you knew right from the beginning due to your omniscience, now need to be punished forever for your incompetence. Oh, go figure. Now, let's switch back to human view. So we see, what is this actually done for humans believing in this version of this God tale? Getting the prayer part right is essential in the Muslims' quest to get away from hell and into heaven. What I never quite understood is why, well, if wine is the invention of the devil, why do you get entire rivers of wine in heaven, but not in hell? And if a God is omnipresent, it should also be in hell, shouldn't he? Well, go figure. But how do you get the prayer right if your God did not give you any precise instructions on what you should do and when and how, if this is so important? Well, the Quran only says that Muslims need to pray. Does it tell Muslims how many times? No. Does it tell Muslims how exactly to pray? No. Humans had to figure out how many times their God would want them to pray in order to get to heaven or to receive salvation. But what if those humans were wrong? Oh dear. Humans had to figure out what sequence to follow and what lines to say, and design a choreography for everyone, depending on what they thought a God would want them to do. But what if those humans were wrong? Oh dear. You'd think that humans, given the sparse instructions from the only source they really have at their disposal, the Quran, would want to make 110% sure this was really what their God wanted, considering that they base their eternity on these lines and the ensuing man-made choreography and surrounding rituals. You'd think that a God who decides to create humans just to worship it would then tell them how to do that properly, wouldn't you? Especially if you've got almost 80%, well almost, of the humans created by that God ignoring it. Well, it did not. So again, humans had to step in and figure out what their God would probably want. They seem to think that, adding many magical words in an extinct language will help make it mystical and sufficiently obscure for outsiders. They figured that since their God didn't mind changing directions and accepting the fact that some areas on Earth didn't even have sunrises for extended time period, which would be useful for praying and fasting, this God wouldn't mind some liberties with the praying ritual itself, which is why they decided Muslims need to pray 5 times a day, keeping them sufficiently busy. To make sure they adhered to this, they used to send a guy up into a minaret and scream his head off to tell Muslims to do the next prayer, or else. In modern times, the guy's been replaced by powerful amplifiers and big speakers, so you get an entire city having to endure the wailing of some guy along with his coughing and sneezing, all these minarets starting at around the same time, but never really at identical times. So it seems to be there is some leniency here which the God doesn't seem to mind. Then the Shias came up with their own interpretation of what their God would most probably want them to do, and so did the Sunnis. The difference between the Shia and the Sunni rituals is actually quite minimal, because the Shia are more Quran-centric. They look at the actual mentioning of prayer in the Quran, which is sunrise and sunset, and thus allow for prayer combinations. And then within the Sunni, the Hanbali disagreed with the Shafis, and the one group decided to cross their feet, place their hands 5 centimeters above what the rest did, and allowed garments 5 centimeters longer than the others, and eventually you get a whole range of differences. The Maliki, a madhab or regional group with a specific legislative interpretation, for example, stand with their hands down and say the end greeting only once. The Hanafi have different hand movements and are more strict with the times of the prayers, although some groups within the Hanafi are lenient when it comes to adjustments when on the road. So there are differences between all the groups and even within the groups, demonstrating once again there is no such thing as a Muslim or the Islam. If you go through the instructions of prayers in Islam, it is probably reminiscent of the choreography of the Can-Can group at the Moulin Rouge. Upper body here, legs there, elbows out, tummy tucked in, chest out, fingers in, chin down, down on your knees, bum in the air, hands at your ears. Oh, come on. And all the time mumbling some magical words in an old language you don't speak or understand, following a script which, will prescribe the movements and trying not to make a single mistake. And the pitfalls are plentiful, and if you make a mistake, the entire prayer does not count towards your bonus points, and then the magic did not work. So what if you follow the wrong instructions? Oh dear, then what? What if you place your thumb around the wrist and lower than your belly button when it should be on top of the wrist and chest high? What if you accidentally put your left arm on top of the right and not vice versa? Well, I've not heard of any Muslims being sent back or rejected from heaven, so maybe their God is not as sticky as Muslims make it out to be. What struck me as odd is the command to take up a position called Yuhud, which can be number 4 or number 6 or whatever ritual you are following. This position is described as with the 7 bones. Well, the God of the Muslims badly screwed up arithmetic and embryology. Let's see if he's any better at anatomy, shall we? Well, the 7 bones. So you have the hands, which you have 2 of, which is 2. Then you have the feet, which are also 2. So you take the 2 of the hands plus the 2 of the feet, and you already have 4. The same goes for the knees, so you add the 2 of the knees plus the 4 of the hands and feet, and you have 6. And then you have the forehead and the nose, which is 1. Forehead and nose is 1. Okay. And then you have taking the 6 of the previous and the 1 from the forehead and the nose, and you have the 7 bones. The nose is a bone, and together with the forehead counts as 1. Oh goodness. Hands consist of 2 bones. Feet consist of 2 bones. Knees consist of 2. Why is the nose even mentioned in connection with bones? Why would it even be important for this choreographer to specifically mention the nose and place it onto the rug? Go figure. For someone who allegedly created humans, albeit out of clay, this god has an amazing deficit in the knowledge of human anatomy. Or, well, is this not based on what a god said, but attributed to a god by pretentious humans? Muslims found some corrupt doctors to testify that the erroneous embryology in the Quran is correct. Maybe they should do the same for anatomy, because this is embarrassingly wrong. Or will I be told that it is only a matter of time before scientists all over the world will find out that our bones have fused and our feet and toes consist of only one single bone? Ah, come on. When will Muslims accept that the Quran and the religious texts are just the result of what humans thought in the 7th century, and that it is painfully wrong? But this should not stop you from believing what you want to believe. Everybody else I welcome to the real world. Thank you for your time.